Imagine setting out on a peaceful hike in the beautiful California wilderness, only to find yourself crossing paths with a predator. This was the reality for the victims of David Carpenter, a man whose brutal killings in the late 1970s and early 1980s terrorized the Bay Area. Known as the Trailside Killer, Carpenter used secluded trails to trap his victims, leaving a trail of fear and devastation. But what led him down this deadly path? And how was he finally caught? Stay with us as we uncover the story of the Trailside Killer. David Carpenter's early life set the stage for the monster he would become. Born in San Francisco in 1930, he grew up in a deeply troubled home. Carpenter faced constant abuse from his mother, which many believe contributed to his deeply rooted anger issues and violent tendencies. As he entered adulthood, Carpenter's violent behavior only intensified. He built a criminal record littered with assaults and violent incidents, including a brutal attack on a young woman in 1960. This attack sent him to prison, but after serving time, Carpenter was released back into society in the 1970s, ready to resume his life. Except now, he had far more sinister plans. The California trails became Carpenter's hunting ground. His method was terrifyingly simple. He chose remote, scenic trails where he could stalk his victims without attracting attention. Carpenter specifically targeted women, often attacking them as they were hiking alone or in pairs. His first known victim, Etta Kane, was a 44-year-old woman who had set out for a quiet hike on Mount Tamalpais in 1979. She never returned. Carpenter killed her in cold blood, leaving her body along the trail. Then came Barbara Schwartz, just 23 years old, who was hiking alone when Carpenter attacked. A witness saw Carpenter fleeing the scene, but he managed to escape before authorities could catch him. One by one, Carpenter's victims fell. Ann Alderson, 26, met a similar fate while hiking in Marin County. Next, Cynthia Moreland and Richard Stowers, a young couple enjoying the beauty of Point Reyes, were ambushed and killed, turning their peaceful hike into a nightmare. Diana O'Connell, an outdoor enthusiast of just 22, was also murdered on a trail. Friends described her as someone who truly loved the outdoors, a passion that would ultimately lead her to cross paths with the Trailside Killer. In another chilling attack, Ellen Hansen and Stephen Hartle were assaulted while hiking together. Ellen lost her life, but miraculously, Stephen survived. His escape would become a key moment in bringing Carpenter to justice, but the horror was far from over. Carpenter's final known victim, Heather Skaggs, was a young woman searching for work. She vanished during a hike, a tragic end for a life full of promise. Carpenter's method was as calculating as it was terrifying. He knew these trails well and chose isolated locations where he could prey on individuals who were alone, vulnerable, and far from help. He often approached his victims slowly, using the element of surprise to overpower them before they had a chance to react. Psychologists later studied Carpenter's behavior, describing him as a highly manipulative and remorseless predator. His background of violent tendencies and abuse pointed to deep psychological issues. But it was his choice to target those enjoying nature, people who would be unprepared for such an attack, that truly marked his modus operandi. The hunt for the Trailside Killer was challenging. Police struggled to gather concrete evidence due to the remote nature of the crimes, with the bodies often discovered long after the murders occurred. However, they eventually got a break. Stephen Hartle, the lone survivor of an attack, was able to provide a detailed description of the killer, which helped investigators piece together an image of Carpenter. Witnesses who had encountered Carpenter before some of the killings described a man who appeared suspicious, watching his potential victims before they disappeared into the dense trails.
He just looked like the average Joe. A few minutes after this man departed the observation deck, we heard this popping sound. Pop, pop, pop.
Slowly, authorities started to connect the dots, realizing that David Carpenter was a strong suspect with a history of violence. After months of painstaking investigation, police finally managed to track down Carpenter and arrest him. The evidence they gathered was damning. Ballistics tests linked his firearm to several murders, and items found in his possession were tied to the victims. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community. The peaceful trails of Northern California had become a scene of horror, and now that terror had a face. David Carpenter's capture brought a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness for the innocent lives lost. David Carpenter's trial was a dramatic and emotional affair. While Carpenter denied his involvement, the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture of a man who targeted the vulnerable, showing no remorse or empathy for his actions. In the courtroom, Carpenter's demeanor was cold and indifferent, a stark contrast to the families of the victims, who were left devastated. Psychologists testified about his manipulative and violent tendencies, emphasizing how calculated his actions had been. Carpenter's lack of reaction only confirmed the prosecution's portrayal of him as a remorseless predator. Ultimately, David Carpenter was found guilty and sentenced to death, a fate he continues to await on California's death row. His conviction brought a sense of closure to the families and the public, but the scars of his actions remained. Carpenter's reign of terror left a lasting impact on the outdoor community in Northern California. Many hikers began to think twice before setting off alone, and for years the trails he once haunted were approached with caution. David Carpenter's actions forever changed the sense of security people once felt in these peaceful landscapes, reminding us that danger can lurk even in the most beautiful places. David Carpenter's reign of terror may have ended with his capture, but the fear he instilled on California trails lingers to this day. His story serves as a grim reminder of the dangers that can lurk even in the most peaceful settings. What are your thoughts on the Trailside Killer? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into chilling true crime cases, remember to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.